The chosen ones, God's final warning. It began not with lightning, but with silence. For 3 days the heavens had been still, no wind, no song of dawnbirds, no whisper of the divine flame that forever danced above the citadel's spires. The air itself felt thick, heavy, as though the world had drawn a long breath and forgotten how to exhale. Then came the thunder. It did not roll across the sky like any storm before it. It spoke. Every chosen, from the frozen peaks of Alundor to the deserts of the hollow sea, felt it within them, not in their ears, but in the core of their being, where their sacred mark pulsed with the rhythm of creation itself. The thunder's voice was vast, without gender, without warmth. It was the sound of eternity given shape. Your final warning has come. And then the sky turned white. The light did not shine upon the world, it consumed it. Mountains vanished in the glare, oceans stilled, and even the stars seemed to bow beneath the brilliance. For a heartbeat, all of existence was one, every chosen seeing, hearing, and feeling the same divine moment. And then, as suddenly as it came, the light was gone. The world returned to shadow, and the thunder fell silent. In the citadel of Orialis, the air cracked with the aftermath of that voice. Lyra, the youngest among the chosen, fell to her knees. Her breath came shallow and sharp. The mark upon her hand, the sacred sigil granted by heaven's flame, blazed with unbearable heat, branding its shape into her palm until smoke rose from her skin. Around her the great hall erupted in chaos. Bells tolled, wings unfurled, and weapons drawn. The elder chosen shouted prayers, each trying to call back the divine name that had spoken to them. But there was no answer. Lyra pressed her burned hand to her chest, tears streaking down her face. She could still feel the echo of the voice vibrating through her bones, vast and sorrowful, as if heaven itself had mourned. Kael, her mentor and closest friend, knelt beside her. His face was pale, his own mark flickering like a candle struggling against wind. "You heard it too," he whispered. Lyra nodded, still trembling. "Not just heard it, it knew me." Kael looked toward the shattered stained glass windows above. The once golden sky was now gray and hollow. Then it's true. The prophecies weren't warnings of war, they were of silence. That night, the citadel of Orialis did not sleep. Messengers arrived from across the realms, each bearing the same report. The voice had spoken everywhere, in temples, battlefields, and ruins alike. Some claimed to have seen faces in the light, others said their marks had turned to ash. In the Hall of Echoes, the chosen gathered. Their armor still glimmered with faint divine light, though that glow now seemed forced, artificial, a remnant of a power that was slipping away. At the center stood Saren, the High Archon, draped in robes of white and gold. Her voice trembled only slightly as she addressed them. "This was no omen of wrath," she said. "It was the breath of the divine itself, one last word before the heavens close. The final warning, but warning of what?" No one answered. Kael clenched his fists. If this is the end, then it was not meant to be peaceful. The marks burned for a reason. Lyra lifted her hand, the sigil still glowing faintly. "I felt it watching me," she said softly. "Not judging, just waiting, like it wanted to see what I'd do next." Saren's gaze hardened. "Then it is not the end, it is the test." When dawn came, the world was changed. The sky, once bright and endless, now shimmered with cracks of light like fractured glass. The sun rose pale and distant. Even the sacred flame above the citadel's highest tower flickered, dimmer than before. Lyra stood upon the terrace, her cloak billowing in the wind. She watched the horizon, where faint storms gathered far beyond the mountains. They pulsed in rhythm, thunder without sound, light without warmth. She whispered to herself, something divine was watching for the last time. Below her, the chosen began their prayers. The words of faith filled the air, yet they felt hollow, ritual without resonance. The voice had spoken once and now left them in its silence, a silence that seemed to spread like shadow across the world. Kale approached her, his armor gleaming faintly in the ghostly dawn. "Do you think it will speak again?" Lyra shook her head. "No, I think it was saying goodbye." He frowned. "Gods don't say goodbye. They command, they punish, they fade," Lyra interrupted. Her tone was quiet, but her words cut deep. "When they have nothing left to give." Kale studied her, seeing something in her eyes he hadn't before, not fear, but resolve. As the day stretched on, reports from the outer lands grew worse. Rivers dried overnight, stars vanished from the northern sky, and entire cities reported the same nightmare. A blinding white light followed by the sound of wings breaking. The Council of the Chosen convened once more. "The balance is collapsing," one elder declared. "If the divine withdraws completely, the seals will fail, the veil will fall." "And then," Kale demanded. "Then what sleeps beyond the veil will wake," the elder said simply. A heavy silence fell. Saren rose from her seat, her eyes distant. "The voice did not speak to destroy us," she murmured. "It warned us. The end is not coming, it's arriving." Lyra felt her mark pulse again, not in pain this time, but as though something deep beneath the world's skin was answering. The air in the hall grew colder. The candles flickered, one by one, and faintly beneath the sound of her own heartbeat she heard it again, a whisper carried by the dying wind. "The heavens are watching for the last time." That night Lyra could not rest. She walked the Citadel's empty corridors, her footsteps echoing through marble halls. Outside, lightning flashed soundlessly across the horizon, painting the towers in ghostly light. She found herself drawn to the Sanctum of Silence, the oldest part of Aurealis, where the first chosen were said to have heard heaven's voice long ago. The doors opened at her touch. Inside, the air was still and cold. In the center stood the altar, a slab of white stone carved with divine runes, each symbol representing a fragment of creation's first song. She knelt before it and whispered, "If you're still listening, if any of this still means something, tell me what to do." There was no answer. Only the faint hum of the air, the soft crack of dying candles. But as she rose to leave, she noticed something new carved into the altar's edge, faint, freshly marked, glowing faintly with warmth. It read, "The storm does not begin with rain. It begins with those who hear it." Her eyes widened. The runes shifted as if alive, the message fading before she could repeat it aloud. "Kale," she breathed. "Saren, everyone needs to see this." But as she turned to run, a gust of cold wind swept through the sanctum, slamming the doors shut behind her. The sacred flame above the altar flickered once, then went out. And in that brief moment of darkness, Lyra saw something move in the reflection of the stone, a shadow, vast and winged, watching her from behind the veil of light. When morning came, she told no one what she'd seen. The chosen were already too frightened, their faith shaken. The voice that shook the sky had done what no war could, it made them doubt. And somewhere deep within her, Lyra felt that doubt too. Because if the gods had given their final warning, then what came next would not be salvation. It would be reckoning. The chosen had once been shepherds of light, guardians of the sacred balance, voices through which the divine will flowed freely into the mortal world. But light, when held too long by mortal hands, begins to burn. Over centuries, their humility eroded beneath gold and glory. The temples they built grew taller than the mountains. The prayers they offered were not of gratitude but of demand. They called themselves kings of dawn, lords of flame, children of the eternal. The people bowed before them, the gods did not. And in that silence, that slow, creeping withdrawal of divine grace, the seeds of disobedience began to take root. At first, the chosen denied anything was wrong. When water stopped healing the wounded, they called it a test. When the sacred fire turned cold, they said the gods were resting. When storms destroyed the sanctuaries of the faithful, they whispered, "It is only the world changing, not us." But deep down they knew. The heavens had not gone silent, they had turned away. In the citadel of Aurealis, the once brilliant heart of divine communion, Saren stood before the great mirror of prophecy. The mirror's surface, forged from celestial crystal, once shimmered with visions of the divine realm. Now it was dull, like a pond covered in ash. Behind her, the other council members waited, their faces grim. Kale leaned against the wall, arms folded, eyes sharp. Lyra stood near the door, her burned hand still wrapped in bandages. Saren's voice broke the stillness. "The miracles fade," she said. "The people begin to doubt us. The gods do not answer. Tell me, what would you have me do?" An elder named Vareth, his eyes clouded with age, spoke first. "We repent. We fall to our knees. We beg forgiveness. It is the only way the divine will return." Kale laughed softly, bitterly. "Forgiveness? For what? For keeping the world alive when the gods turn their backs on us, for holding the line while heaven sleeps." Saren turned to him, her golden eyes narrowing. "Mind your tongue, Kale." But Kale didn't flinch. "You feel it too, don't you? That emptiness in your prayers, that hollow in your chest. The voice is gone, maybe for good." A murmur swept through the council. Lyra spoke quietly, her voice trembling. Maybe it's not gone. Maybe it's waiting for us to listen again." Saren faced the mirror once more, her reflection faint in the darkened glass. "And what if it is? What if we are the ones left behind?" That night Saren walked alone through the Garden of Ascension, where statues of the first chosen lined the path. Once their eyes glowed faintly with celestial fire, a reminder that even in death they watched over their descendants. Now the statues were dull, their faces eroded by time. She stopped before the statue of Alien, the first chosen, her ancestor, and the one who had first heard heaven's voice. Her fingers brushed against the cold stone. "We kept your promise," she whispered. "We built what you began. Why then have they forsaken us?" The air trembled. A faint wind stirred the dead leaves around her feet, whispering words too soft to hear. For a heartbeat, Saren thought she felt warmth return to the mark on her wrist. Then nothing. Only the cold. Days turned into weeks, and the miracles dwindled further. The rivers that once flowed with healing light ran dry. The skies turned a pale silver, neither day nor night. Even the sacred flame atop the citadel, said to burn with heaven's breath, began to sputter and fade. Panic spread through the lands. The faithful began to lose faith. The unfaithful began to rebel. Shrines were torn down. Priests were accused of deceit. Villages that once thrived under the Chosen's protection now cursed their names. And for the first time in recorded history, the Chosen felt fear. In the Hall of Convergence, the council gathered once more. The chamber's great windows no longer shimmered with divine light, only the dim reflection of torches. "The people riot in the streets," reported one of the scouts. "They say the gods are dead, that the Chosen hoard what remains of their power." "They're not entirely wrong," Kale muttered. Saren rose from her seat, her voice cold. "Enough. We have given them light, healing, protection, all they ever asked. If they turn against us now, then they choose darkness." Vareth slammed his staff against the floor. "You cannot speak of them so. We were meant to serve, not rule." Saren's gaze snapped toward him. "Serve who? The gods who no longer answer, the people who curse us for their misfortunes." Her tone sharpened, echoing through the hall. "If heaven has turned away, then we will rule this world ourselves." The chamber fell silent. Even the torches flickered, as if afraid of what had just been spoken. Lyra stared at her leader in disbelief. "You can't mean that." Saren's eyes glowed faintly, gold like molten metal. "I do. We were chosen because we were strong. We carry divine power still, however faint. If the heavens abandon us, then we become our own gods." Kale frowned but said nothing. There was admiration in his silence and a dangerous spark. Lyra stepped forward. "That's not power, that's pride." Saren turned to her. "Pride built this citadel. Pride united the realms. Pride gave mortals hope when the heavens fell silent. Do not mistake pride for sin, child." Lyra shook her head. "It was pride that ended the divine war before this, and it will end us too." For a moment, the two women stared at each other, youth and authority, faith and defiance, until the tension broke with the crack of thunder outside. A storm had begun to form over the citadel, dark clouds, circling a center of light that pulsed unnaturally. Saren glanced toward the window. "The world changes, Lyra, and I will not kneel before ghosts while it burns." By midnight, the decision was made. The chosen would no longer pray. They would no longer wait for heaven's voice. They would forge a new covenant, one written not in faith but in dominion. Kale gathered the strongest among them, warriors and seers who still carried fragments of divine fire within their blood. In secret, they began to channel their power into something new, an artificial light that could replace the sacred flame. They called it the Ascendant Forge. Lyra watched from the shadows, her heart heavy. The forge pulsed with energy, but it was wrong. Its light was too harsh, its hum too cold. It did not sing with the harmony of creation, but with the whisper of rebellion. When they ignited it, the earth trembled. The heavens flashed once like a warning. And then came the silence. The next day, strange omens spread across the lands. The stars flickered, the oceans retreated. The sacred beasts that once served the chosen began to vanish into the mist. At dusk, Lyra climbed the tower to find Saren watching the horizon. The new flame, the one born from the Ascendant Forge, burned black at its edges, sending streaks of shadow instead of light into the clouds above. Lyra approached cautiously. "It's dying," she said, "just like the others." Saren didn't look at her. "No, it's evolving." Lyra frowned. "Evolving into what?" Saren smiled faintly, eyes glowing with a fire that was not of heaven. "Into something that cannot be abandoned." For a moment, Lyra saw it, a flicker of darkness moving beneath Saren's skin, crawling like living ink through her veins. And she knew then, whatever they had created, it wasn't divine. It was something else. That night the whisper returned, not from heaven but from below. It slithered through the wind, through the cracks in the citadel walls, through the hearts of every chosen who had once prayed and now dared to command. It said only one thing. When the faithful defy the divine does not forgive. It watches. Lyra awoke in her chamber, gasping. The mark on her hand glowed again, faint but pure. Somewhere beyond the silence, something holy still remained. But as thunder rolled across the world, she realized that Saren's words had already sealed their fate. They had chosen to rule a world the gods had left behind. And in doing so, had invited something far worse to take their place. The storm had not stopped since the night the Ascendant Forge was lit. Lightning danced without sound. The rain fell without water. The world itself seemed to hold its breath, suspended between two heartbeats of creation. Lyra wandered through the shattered plains beyond Aurealis, her cloak heavy with ash. She had left the citadel under the veil of darkness, fleeing the blinding glow of the false flame Saren had forged. That light was wrong, too perfect, too complete. It did not shine, it devoured. She followed whispers on the wind, faint echoes that called her name in languages older than man, older even than angels. The sound drew her to the ruins of the **first temple*, a place forbidden to all but the most devout. Here, it was said, heaven's first covenant had been written in light itself. But now only shadows remained. The temple had collapsed ages ago, its pillars buried under dust and bone. The air was thick with forgotten prayers. Faded sigils glimmered faintly along the walls, symbols once radiant with divine energy, now barely visible beneath soot. Lyra's steps echoed softly as she entered what remained of the inner sanctum. There, half buried in stone and vine, stood the asterisk table of Origen's ***, a massive slab carved from celestial marble, cracked down its center as though struck by the wrath of the heavens themselves. She brushed away the dirt, revealing faint golden runes. As her hand passed over them, the symbols stirred like embers remembering how to burn. Light rippled across the stone, weak but alive. It spoke to her. The voice was not sound but memory, a resonance in her bones. In the beginning, there was harmony between breath and flame, body and soul. But when pride reached beyond its bounds, the harmony broke. The Creator shall speak once more, and those who turn away will fall into silence eternal. Lyra's breath caught. Her mark blazed faintly, pulsing with the same rhythm as the glowing scripture. Each word seemed to weigh upon her spirit like the gravity of truth. She read further, tracing the runes with trembling fingers. When his words are ignored, light will abandon the faithful, and creation will weep in fire. The chosen shall stand trial not by gods, but by their own shadows. And from their ashes, only one will carry the true flame. She fell to her knees. The scripture was not history, it was prophecy. And it was happening now. Visions flooded her mind, images that were not her own. She saw the citadel burning beneath a red sky. Saren, standing at the heart of a storm, her eyes filled with fire. Chaol, blade drawn, his shadow stretching far beyond human form. She saw oceans boiling, mountains crumbling, and the stars dimming one by one, as if the heavens themselves turned their faces away. In the chaos, a single voice echoed, the same thunder that had once shaken the sky in warning. Only this time it did not speak in words, it cried in sorrow. When the vision faded, Lyra gasped for breath, her hands shaking violently. The temple's walls seemed to lean inward, pressing upon her from every direction. The divine symbols glowed brighter, then began to burn, peeling from the stone and floating like dying fireflies into the air. The asterisk prophecy of silence had been reawakened. Outside, the wind shifted. The rain stopped. The world went still. Lyra rose unsteadily, clutching the remnants of the tablet to her chest. "It's too late," she whispered. "He already spoke and we did not listen." A deep rumble answered her, not thunder this time, but movement beneath the earth. The ground cracked, and from within the fissures spilled molten light, not lava, but divine essence bleeding from the wounded world. It hissed and steamed as it touched the air, forming tendrils of golden mist. Lyra staggered backward, shielding her eyes. In the mist, a figure appeared, tall, faceless, robed in light that flickered between purity and decay. The being's voice was soft yet vast, like a memory of creation itself. "Child of the Mark," it said, "why do you seek the words that were buried?" Lyra bowed instinctively. "Because the world is dying, because the chosen have forgotten." "Then you already know," the being replied, its tone mournful. "The silence you fear is not punishment, it is mercy." "Mercy?" Lyra's voice cracked. "You call this mercy?" "The Creator does not destroy, he withdraws. He allows what was made to find its own end, and in ending its truth." Lyra's heart trembled. Then what of us? What of those who still believe? The being tilted its head. "Belief without humility is only hunger. The chosen consumed what was sacred until nothing was left but the echo of their own voices." It reached out, brushing her cheek with a hand of light. "But there is still one chance. The final flame sleeps, hidden in the ashes of faith. Find it before the silence becomes complete." Lyra blinked, and the figure was gone. Only the golden mist remained, fading into nothing. By the time she returned to the surface, dawn had broken, though the sun looked pale and sickly. The sky no longer shimmered with divine warmth. It was hollow, drained. The very air tasted of endings. In the distance, she could see Orialis, the citadel of the chosen. Its towers once reflected the morning light. Now they seemed to bleed shadow. Over its highest spire the ascendant forge burned a false sun, pulsing with the rhythm of corruption. Lyra clenched her fists. "Saren, what have you done?" She began the long walk back through the ruins and forests, haunted by what she had read. Each step felt heavier, as though the world itself resisted her return. Strange shapes moved in the distance, not demons, not mortals, but something between both. The fallen chosen. She hid when she could, though some of them did not attack. They simply stared, hollow-eyed, whispering fragments of prayers that no longer had meaning. One, a woman with the mark of water on her arm, reached out as Lyra passed. "He doesn't answer anymore," she murmured. "Do you hear it too? The silence. It's everywhere." Lyra knelt beside her. "You can still be saved. There's a way." The woman smiled faintly, her skin cracking like old porcelain. "There's no saving what the light has forgotten." Then she crumbled, her body turning to dust in the wind. By nightfall, Lyra reached the edge of the Twilight Vale where the earth met the sea. The water was black, reflecting no stars. She looked toward the horizon and saw the faint shimmer of the citadel's flame flickering like a wound in the sky. She took out a shard of the temple stone she had carried with her and studied the faint symbols still etched upon it. One word glowed brighter than the rest: witness. She understood then. The next voice would not be a warning. It would not offer mercy. It would not beg for faith. It would come to witness and to judge. Lyra fell to her knees on the blackened sand and pressed her mark into the earth. It glowed faintly, responding to her heartbeat. "If there is still light left in this world," she whispered, "let it find me before the darkness does." The sea stirred, the wind sighed. And somewhere far above, beyond the clouds and silence, something ancient, something divine, opened its eyes once more. Across the world, the marks of the chosen began to fade. Their power, their glory, their protection, all slipping away. Some begged the heavens, others cursed them. Kale, the most defiant of all, raised his sword toward the clouds. "If he will not speak again," he roared, "then we will make the heavens hear us." Lightning answered, not as approval, but as wrath. The sky split open, and a storm unlike any before descended upon the earth. Lyra stood on the holy mountain as fire fell from the heavens. Around her the chosen fought each other, some seeking redemption, others refusing it. Then through the roaring storm, the voice spoke once more. "This is not punishment, it is consequence." The ground shattered, the temples of light crumbled. Every false oath, every abused miracle, every act of pride ignited in divine flame. And then silence, eternal and absolute. When the smoke cleared, only Lyra remained, her mark gone, her armor scorched. The world was quiet, scarred, but alive. A single white flower bloomed through the ashes at her feet. She fell to her knees and whispered, "We were warned, we just didn't listen." The sun rose pale, distant but real. And in that fragile light, a new faith began, not built on power but on humility. God never spoke again. He didn't need to.